videos, I've discussed how I got into shortwave listening. I thought I'd finish the series off by relating to you how I got involved in amateur radio. So in the 1980s, as a youngster, I spent a lot of time listening to the bands on my Realistic DX200. Now, I was mainly listening to shortwave broadcasts at this time, but the radio had SSB, and from time to time I tuned to the amateur bands, mainly 160 or 80 meters, and listened. But at that time I didn't really have any thoughts or interest in becoming a radio amateur. Now, I've got a younger sister, and she had a school friend who, it seems, had received the CB radio for her birthday. Remember, this was quite common in the 1980s. UK CB had been legalised and it was becoming very, very popular, particularly with young people. Anyway, it seems that this girl had lost interest in the radio and her parents were looking to sell it. I'm not sure how, but my parents became aware of this, and it was thought that as I was interested in radios, I'd like to have it. A reasonable price was agreed, and I ended up with a setup which included a CB radio, power supply, antenna, and of course coax cable. The radio was a Harvard 400M. I remember it well. The antenna was a UK legal one with a short 1.5 meter radiating element, and a legal CB radio at that time had a power output limited to 4 watts. With the help of my dad, we got hold of a metal pole. The antenna was set up and I was on the air. At that time, the 40 channels on legal CB were always busy. There were lots of voices to be heard, and gradually I built up courage to speak to a few people. Fairly early on, the radio developed a problem. It went very deaf, making it hard to hear anything other than very local signals. Where I lived, we were lucky enough that in town we had a well-stocked CB and amateur radio shop. I was 14 or 15 years old at the time, and my mum and I went into town to visit the shop to see if we could get the radio repaired. To cut a long story short, the radio was soon repaired and back up and running. That's not really the important part. While I was in the shop, the owner, who was a long-standing licensed radio amateur, said that if I was interested in radio, I should study and get my amateur radio license. At the time, a course was running one evening a week in town, and well, before we left the shop, I was signed up to that course. Fast forward a few months and I'd passed the radio amateur's exam and I had a call sign. At that time in the UK there were 2 classes of call sign, A and B. Passing the exam gave you a B licence so you could use the VHF and above bands. At this time I was still in school. I had no money to buy HF rigs and the like, so I stuck with my B licence. I had a KDK 2 meter FM transceiver and a Slim Jim antenna, and on VHF I had a lot of fun and made a lot of friends. Fast forward to 1988, and by this time I was working. I bought an HF transceiver to listen to. I studied for my Morse code exam. I got my full license, my A license, and I went on the air with my ICOM 720A. And indeed, my first HF QSO was on the key on CW. I'm very proud of that. Whilst I've always been a listener, and it'd be fair to say that was the main aspect of my radio hobbies, I've always kept up my amateur radio license. Shortwave listening can be a bit of a solitary hobby. Amateur radio, well, with amateur radio you talk to people and you meet people. When I've moved locations, I've joined my local amateur radio club and I've met people face to face that way, and also through speaking to them locally on the VHF bands. So it's opened up a new aspect, a better aspect perhaps socially of the hobby. I've always enjoyed that side, although I've always very much been a shortwave listener at heart. Anyway, that's how I got involved in amateur radio, is through a combination of shortwave listening and CB. I'd be interested in how you got involved in the hobby. Was it similar? Was it through CB? Was it through shortwave radio? Was it something else? Let me know in the comments. I hope you found that of some interest. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you again soon in another video.